Hello folks, welcome to the second part of the highlights from the episode of the Bestseller Experiment where I talked about all about this thing. And in this one we talk about the development of the Crowfolk, how long it's been swishing around in my mind, versions that I got rid of, how it was nearly self-published, we featured notes from my editor, all of this in about 8-9 minutes. It's jam-packed, so do please enjoy.
Tanya, that's a brilliant one. I wanted to ask as well, Mark, a bit about this. It's come up a lot, actually, and people are very curious about how the book was developed. And Mike Revel, thanks for your question, Mike. He said he'd love to know more about your writing process for the book. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this book was written with the 200 word a day challenge, wasn't it?
No, that's book 2.
That's book 2. Oh my gosh,
yes,
way
book 2
ahead.
Yeah. But this was. Well, the thing is, I had entire drafts of scripts and novels dating back over 10 years, and I just got sick of rewriting the same thing over and over again. So I got rid of it all. You
just chucked it all away? You just said,
well, it's not filed away.
Filed away. But okay, interesting. Yeah.
Very, very little of those. The village is the same. The name of the village. Some of the sort of magical background. But essentially, most of it is gone. Almost.
Did you actually go through a process as you were archiving those notes of saying, what am I going to keep from this? Or was it just...
Yes, a bit. You kind of think, okay, what's evergreen? What's going to, what's the good stuff? And there wasn't a lot of it. Although one of what the story might come back for book 4 or 5 if I get there, because there's something about that story that I do want to come back to, but it will be told from Faye's point of view, not the creature's point of view. So, because I was going for a kind of a Swamp Thing vibe with the original, and it just didn't work. And anyway, so I had all these old drafts, and pretty much all of it was jettisoned. So.
Interesting. And so how did you kind of go through the process from initial notes to outline and draft, Mike asks?
Well, it was because it's the first in a series, I kind of saw it as a bit of a superhero origin story. Faye finds magic, learns how to use it against a terrible foe. It's her first real test as a character. And I spent a little time making sure I had the main characters right. I kind of discovered where I wanted her to be by the end of the book, and I did pretty much jump into it. So it wasn't I didn't outline very much. I'd outlined End of Magic heavily, as you know. Back to Reality, we outlined heavily because we were working together. This was much lighter. Now I've been prepping this all afternoon, so I did try and find notes, and it's been quite hard to find where I made the switch. I basically started this in December 2018. And that was the point where I think I jettisoned all the other stuff, looking at the different old Scrivener files, So, and that draft, that first draft I found is pretty similar to what's been published. And also, the other thing is I had planned to self-publish, inspired by our own Ian W. Sainsbury, friend of the podcast, award-winning author. I was going to do a quick release, 3 novellas, boom, 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 because, and I think what helped was mentally I was thinking, okay, these are going to be short, about 45, 50,000 words. So just jump in and have fun. And I did. I had loads of fun. So yeah, that was the thinking behind that one. It's just, go for it.
Excellent. And how many words in book 1? Can you remember how many it turned out at?
Well, there's a little story behind that, and Rhoda asked a question later on about how, because I got to about 45, in the end it ended up at about 65, so still quite short. But
yeah, actually, Rhoda asked, she says, I heard the book started out as a novella and ended up being a full book. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how did you go about extending it?
Good question. And I did dig out my notes. I've got my email from Ed. So let me read you Ed's email.
Being your agent, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Ed Wilson, the lovely Ed Wilson. And this is great. So I said to him up front, I want to self-publish this, but have a look at it and see what you think. And anyway, I got his email. He said, anyway, nothing too major, but all ties into my big point. Why is this book only 45,000 words? Woodville is completely effing brilliant. And he has, bless him, starred out the UCK there in the he says, tonally spot on.
Just in case it ever got read out on a podcast.
Exactly. Exactly. He's always thinking ahead.
He is. He's a smart man, is Ed?
Yeah. He says, tonally spot on, perfectly realised, structured and paced, deliciously readable. This is cosy fantasy, the genre mashup we didn't know we needed. The characters zing off the page. You develop a real emotional connection in such a short space of time. I was in pieces at the end, you bastard. Which is great.
He's just written the blurb right there, isn't he?
Now, we've talked about the praise sandwich on here before, how you give criticism. You start with, this is good. Yeah. No, there's a but coming, don't you? Thundering over the horizon. Okay. So he says, but there is I think there's 7 O's in that and it's all in caps. So much more you can do. Because you've limited the word count, you don't have time to properly establish the setting before you get stuck into the plot. We need to see more normal village life, more Dad's Army war preparations, more vicars and oversized veg and tongue-in-cheek Archer-style village politics before the talking pumpkins appear, or rather before the villagers see the talking pumpkins. The way you've written it, we have the big reveal and the fantastical events go above ground within the first third of the book, and in a book this length, that's too soon. You're giving up too easy and losing the fundamental tension of what is and isn't real, who is and isn't balmy. We need more twists and turns, more tension around who and what Faye, Charlotte and Mrs. Teach, those are the witches, are. You can keep structure and tone the same. Fundamentally, that doesn't have to change. Just add more tension, intrigue, spooky goings on, sow seeds for future books, and then once you've established the series, you can do pretty much what you want. This first book is vital to establish the series. You've got to properly establish it. Book 1 is too important to have it dismissed as just a novella. So this was great, and he said, I had a manuscript from him marked up all the way through with notes all the way through. So that was my jumping off point to answer Rhoda's question. It was, the tension, the questions. I was just kind of giving it all away too quickly, and it just dug a little deeper as a result. It's so
I've got to say, that, folks, is the reason why you try and get an agent, because so many people think agents are just, you give them the book and then they go and flog it, and they go off and they have a beer or a glass of wine with their connections, and then they try and sell the book over lunch. But people don't realize that good agents are your best friends and your best, constructive critics as well. And it sounds like Ed at that point in the journey really gave you the crossroads to say, look, these are all the things you can do. And if somebody's self-publishing without an agent, for example, they wouldn't have known where to gone at that point. They may have just put it out as a 45,000 word self-published and missed out on what potentially could have been the most incredible ride of their life. So that's absolutely fantastic. And what a great insight as well to hear that stage of the journey at that point. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, folks. Really hope you enjoyed that. Got all sorts of fun stuff coming up in future episodes, including how I work with historical language, writing a book without any swear words. That's a first for me. I'm comparing my different publishing experiences. So that's, working in crowdfunding and self-publishing and traditional publishing, looking at how those all work, and all sorts of other good fun stuff. So do please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.